So you wanna be a picture book writer, then you gotta write picture books. And you're gonna need a bucket load of bright ideas for titles, plots, and hooks. If you're partial to prose or you're raring to rhyme, then repeat after me. It's a challenge, but I'm gonna tackle each story 1 month at a time with 12 by 12.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 12 by 12 Picture Book Podcast. I'm published author and founder of 12 by 12, Julie Headland. We're here today with co-host and Kelly. I came up with, I don't think it works for 12 by 12, but a title that's apt, which is COO, Chief Operating Officer.
Oh, well.
So you know how I would be the
That's
CEO,
going on my LinkedIn profile.
right? Like as a founder, I would be the CEO.
Right.
But and so we'll have to find a more fun way.
Yeah, the kidlit version of that, but I like
whatever that is. Yeah.
I like it.
Anyway,
I'm Kelly Panique, by the way.
Yes, Kelly Panique, co-host and Chief Operating Officer of 12 by 12. And we are very lucky to be here today with longtime member and our dear friend, Michelle Cusolito. Michelle, welcome.
Hello. So nice to see you both today. Thanks for having me.
So happy you're here.
So happy you're here. And I want to start by telling you that in the world of whales, which if you're on YouTube, you can see that kind of right behind Michelle, and also I have it right here, was by far one of my favorite books last year, and it got a lot of awards, which it deserves. Written by you, illustrated by Jessica Lannon. I love this book so much, so we'll talk more about that. But you are a passionate writer, nonfiction, science, specifically around the ocean. Up until very recently, all of your books had something to do with the ocean. Flying deep, diving deep, jellyfish scientist. You had a middle grade that I'm not going to remember the name of. What is it?
A window into the ocean twilight zone.
Into the ocean, right? A window into the ocean twilight zone. Oh, good. Kelly's got yes.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Jellyfish scientist and in the world of whales. And I remember you saying somewhere, I will have no idea where, but I remember you saying that if you only ever wrote about the ocean, that's all you really ever wanted to write about. You were fine writing only about the ocean. And yet, right behind you is your next, well, actually, this book just came out.
Not yet.
Well,
end of March.
End of March. So
by the time the podcast comes out, probably so, right?
Yeah. So this book just released on March 31st. I think it's called Rooted in Wonder, and it is about trees.
It is.
So I wanted to ask, how did this, my ocean writing friend, how did this book come about?
So I don't remember where I said what you're referencing. I completely believe that I would have said it, because I think it might have been in the context of I could write books about the ocean forever and still barely scratch the surface of what there is to say about the ocean, because I'm frustrated that gets sort of clumped in as one idea. And there is just, the ocean is so diverse, which is why, and I'm so fascinated by it. But, I am a land-bound animal, and I spend a lot of time in the woods. I know you can't see outside my window, but I'm literally surrounded by forests, and trees have been a big part of my life, my whole life. I'm climbing trees as a kid, building forts in trees, things like that. But this book actually came about in a slightly different way. I knew an editor named Laura Whitaker Jones. We had met at a retreat, I don't know, back in 2015 or something like that. And she posted, I saw her posting, hey, nonfiction writer and agenting friends, I'm looking for someone to write a book. Are you, ping me if you're interested, something like this. And I was like, what's this about, Laura? What's the book? And so basically what happened was the illustrator, Maya Wright, had the idea to write about national trees of the world. She wanted to illustrate the book, and they were looking for someone who might want to write the book. So I thought a long time about whether I was right for this project, because it is a departure from my usual. But yet, if you know me as a person, it's not a departure from me as a person. You know, as a writer, it's kind of a new idea maybe for people. But because trees are so important to me, it wasn't a big stretch. Like I have a photo of a baobab tree from 1998, I think, when I was in Niger hugging a baobab tree, you know, and olive trees.
A tree hugger is what you're saying.
I am a tree hugger. I've hugged trees in like 5 continents, you know? So like it wasn't that big of a stretch. I've spent time in the rainforest on a research expedition back in the 90s. Like, so I've been around trees. And so I'm like, okay, this is good for me. This is a good fit. So that's how it started. But Maya had the idea first, and then we kind of developed some of the beginning stages together, which is not the way things usually go. Typically, the author comes up with the idea and writes the whole thing and then sends it out, and then the illustrator is attached later. But in this case, we were collaborating a lot in the beginning. It was me. The woman who originally purchased the book was named Fiona, my original editor. She has since left the publishing company, but she edited all of the main text with me and developed the idea with me, with the art director, and with Maya. So it was sort of fun to collaborate in a different way like that.
Yeah, because usually a publisher will acquire a text and then find an illustrator, and you typically don't have that much communication with the illustrator in the process of the book getting made, if at all. Usually whatever communication happens through the editor and or art director. And this is almost the reverse.
Right. Yeah. That's the way it's been for all of my other books. You know, I've had a lot of input toward the illustrations, but it goes through my editor and the art director. They come to me maybe asking questions, and then I give information back. Once in a while, I've had direct communication with In the World of Whales. Jessica did reach out to me like, do you know what kind of camera that is in that photo that he's holding? Or what kind of boat is that? And we had some back and forths directly because we already had communicated with each other. But that was she initiated that contact. I did not reach out trying to give her any direction. I've never done that. Do not do that. I reach out and say, I'm so excited. We're working on this book together.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I can connect you with resources, experts, whatever, and then have fun illustrating. And then I'm like, that my job's done unless they come back to me.
That's a good question, though, because with flying deep and diving deep, you're talking specifically about the Alvin and all of those things. So you didn't send or did you send reference materials to them about that particular
yes.
machine and everything?
Yes,
okay.
I send, with all of my projects, I send visual references, whatever I have that I think might be useful. And as I'm developing a project, I'm keeping my eyes open for good visual references. I did learn, though, with Flying Deep. That was my very first book. I had heard over and over, I'm a member of 12 by 12. I knew that I shouldn't be telling my illustrator anything. I didn't reach out to Nicole at that time, Nicole Wong. And I found out from her after the fact that she had trouble finding some images she needed. Alvin was out at sea for like that whole year she was illustrating. And she needed some particular angles. She was like, you know, sometimes if I want to make a picture of you, Michelle, imagine if I only had like this much of a little piece of your face and a little piece of your left side and then down here. And now I'm trying to draw the whole Michelle. And I was like, darn it, because I could have gotten those images for her. I could have just emailed the pilot and been like, Bruce, we go snap some pictures for us? And he would have done it. Right. And so that's when I was like, I'm going to send an email from now on, just directly say, if you need something, I'm here. Definitely feel free to ask. So that was my learning experience with that.
Yeah.
one.
But you weren't submitting, you don't submit art notes. You just send here, this is the thing we're talking about. Here's all of the material I have. Do with it what you will. Right.
Right. I send very few illustration notes. A couple that happened in Flying Deep, I can think of off the top of my head. Like one was like, I might include the Latin name of a particular animal, even though I'm using the common name to describe it to make sure they get the right one. But in Flying Deep, I also said when they climb into the Alvin sphere, they only have socks on their feet. None of the passengers have shoes on, because that was an important scientific fact, an accuracy, not scientific, an accuracy point that they had told me, but I'm like, that doesn't fit with the text, but I want to make sure that she doesn't put shoes on them in the illustrations.
Because that'll be the first thing the captain and the crew look for. They'll be like, they have
Yeah. Well, yeah, and kids, but kids notice too. They notice there are no shoes, and they ask me about it when I do school visits, things like that. So when it's a matter of I want to make sure they know something important, then I put that in the note.
Yeah. And even then, like I never did speak to the illustrator of Song After Song, the musical life, Julie Andrews. That's Ilaria Urbanati, and she's Italian. And I did the same thing you did, where I've taken a trip there and I had all these archival images and just piles and piles of material. And I sent it to her. And when I got the full color, they send you a sketch dummy, and then the editor asked me for feedback, and then you get like the full color. And what was interesting was Julie's mother came back with dark hair, and she had flaming red hair. But all of the pictures that I had included were black and white. The illustrator would not have known that. So, with nonfiction, I think it is important to have a little bit of that, to have a line of communication open, whether it's with your editor or the art director, or so that you can make things accurate.
Right.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I get to see the sketch phase of my books and give feedback, and I'm reading for accuracy. I'm not commenting on, oh, I don't like that design, unless I'm asked that question. If I'm asked something specific, of course I answer, but I get sketches, then I get final art. And my books are generally run through, an expert will look at the illustration phase even to make sure the illustrations are accurate. So like my new book, Rooted in Wonder, we had a couple of botanists review the work from a botanical garden, and they were looking at the text and the illustration, and they had, tiny notes for us, but a little thing about the way an oak tree drops the acorn and the leaves was helpful for Maya to make the illustration accurate. And there was I can't remember now off the top of my head, some little detail in my text that they helped me correct. So it's important that someone is looking and helping make them be as accurate as possible.
So something that you do really well and that you're passionate about, that is also very important for nonfiction picture book authors, is research. And I know we can't get into all of the things about research, but people always have a lot of questions about it. So I wanted to ask if you have any things that you do each time you have a project, just whatever advice you can give us about doing research on a nonfiction picture book.
Yeah, I love research. You're right about that. And it can take a long time. I love to do real world research as much as possible. So go to the place, go inside the submersible, go on an expedition like I did when I wrote Window into the Ocean Twilight Zone. I love that sort of experiential aspect of researching and writing a book. My most recent book, though, Rooted in Wonder, I had to come at it in a very different way, because a lot of times what I do is I see some article or a post from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and I'm like, what is this? And I read the article, and then I go chasing everything I can. I might be reading a bunch of secondary sources, and then I'm going to like journal articles and scientific publications. And then I start talking to the scientists and, whatever, like maybe like that. With Rooted in Wonder, this book basically is there's an examination of 12 of the world's national trees. So I had to research 12 different trees from 12 different countries.
I love
and
that.
So,
number 12. 12 trees.
I know.
12 trees for 12 by 12.
I had a difficult time running down some of the information, because number one job was I have to verify that this tree that I think is the national tree of a country is in fact the national tree of that country.
Yeah,
and
that seems important.
It was really hard to figure that out. I was on government websites, and sometimes it's in a different language and I'm trying to translate. It was really hard. So a lot of my research was done on official websites from governments of other countries or botanical gardens like Kew Gardens or botanical gardens in Australia, whatever, things like that. I did also read some books, and some of it's experiential because, as I said before, I've hugged a lot of trees. So I happened to be visiting Morocco for the second time when I was working on this book. And so there's a stanza in the book that I actually wrote while we were in Morocco, looking at these lots of olive groves that I was writing about. So, but the experiential for me is a big driver. It's something that I'm interested and want to do and, want to write about.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I know one question, though, is aside from Rooted in Wonder, which came about in a different way, I think most of your books, like pretty much 99% of picture books, you're just writing, hoping that they'll sell.
Right.
So from a financial perspective, what advice would you give to folks trying to balance wanting to get those experiences, but also you kind of have to pay for them out of your own pocket initially?
My biggest advice is find the stories that are close to home. I was going on vacation with my family. That was a plan. Our kids had graduated, both had graduated, one from high school, one from college, and we were doing a trip. That was the reason we were in Morocco. That is not, I didn't go to Morocco to research for the book, right? Other things, all Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution is about 45 minutes from my house. So my first 3 books were 100% centered around things that happen at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. I have access. Jellyfish Scientist happened because this is an Irish lady. The book is about an Irish woman. I was living in Ireland, and that was local to me at that time when I first started researching about her, the Irish Museum of Natural History in Dublin, and read all these letters that Maud had written. And so my best advice is find the stuff that's close to home. There is science if you're writing science, for example, there's science happening all over the place. There's history all over the place. Find the things that are close to home. I can't bankroll a trip to go traveling to all these places to do research. Most of us can't, right? And publishers don't do that. So that's my best advice. Find the stuff that's local.
So I know you've talked about how much you love research, so I can only imagine how many resources you have for just one of your books. How do you organize it, and has your organization changed from your first book to your most recent one?
I do a little bit of a mashup between hybrid and analog. I now have mostly work in Scrivener, where Scrivener is a piece of software that's made for writers, and it historically has been used especially by people who write novels or long nonfiction books. But I actually use it. Scrivener saved me for when Rooted in Wonder, because what I did is I set up, it's called the binder on the left side. It looks sort of like an Outlook folder. If you use Outlook, it looks kind of like that. And then there's a place where you can there's a research folder, and I set up separate pages for every single tree. So each tree had a page, and all my research got dumped in there. But I also find it difficult to read a book or a complex science article like published in a science journal. I have trouble reading off a computer and taking notes. I work better analog, especially at science journals. I highlight, I underline. And I actually write a lot of my notes in a notebook, in an analog notebook. So every time I start a project, I start a notebook along with the project and take notes in there. Eventually, I often input those notes into my Scrivener file or something so that they're in a place where I can find them later. I didn't always do that. I'm getting better about that now. And often I use dictation on my phone. I read my notebook into my phone, save it as a note, and then just send it to myself and drop it into Scrivener, because that works.
Genius.
It works well for me in that way. But I also I work analog a lot when I'm drafting. So a lot of that will also happen in the same notebook. So I set up a table of contents in the front. Beth Anderson is the person first got this idea from, this notebook idea. I set up a table of contents, and I have a page for research and all these different things throughout. And then I also have drafting that I write in that notebook.
Wow. Yeah, Beth
My
Anderson.
schoolgirl heart is
I
just
know, I know. The notebooks,
Trapper Keeper. I have a Trapper Keeper for every one of my projects. I love it. I'm sorry,
yeah.
Julie. I interrupted
No,
you.
that's okay. Beth Anderson is a nonfiction author, and she's here in Colorado, as is Jessica Lannon, who
Yes.
illustrated In the World of Whales,
She
which
lives in Boulder.
she does. She does. Her art, I mean, you're so lucky. The art for all of your books is incredible. Just incredible.
100%. 100%. Do you know that Jessica learned to scuba dive while working on our book because she wanted to understand like how it felt to be neutrally buoyant and understand the movement of light in water, things like that. In the book, he's a free diver. He doesn't have scuba gear, but she was like, yeah, that's not for me.
Yeah, no.
I'm on board. I agree with you on that. But she learned to scuba in Boulder, like in a pool, and then eventually went and dove in the ocean. Like,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
Cool.
amazing.
That is
I did not
cool.
know that. I did not
Mhm.
know that. I did want to ask you, and this is just because I love this book so much. It's the text is so spare. I mean, this is a great example. I encourage everybody to get this book as a fabulous example of leaving so much room for the illustrator
Mm,
to
thank you.
work magic. I mean, you write in a very lyrical way. You always have. And but I mean, look at this. For those of you who
I
are
And
know.
we're
on
talking about In the World of Whales
in
still.
the world of
Yeah.
whales.
So there's a
So
baby whale and a big
this
whale,
is,
and it's across the 2-page spread. It's gorgeous.
yeah, this book is about a moment in time where the this free diver happens upon a pod of sperm whales and witnesses a birth and it's one of these. I can imagine that this was somewhat difficult to write about because it's one of those moments that I think is really such a feeling of awe, of
Mm.
wonder, of by the time you know what's happening, you're already like, I don't know. How did you get the idea for this book? And speaking of research, what materials were you able to draw on to get that emotion in it? Because there's so much in it.
I actually I when I was writing Diving Deep, that book basically is an investigation of like the different ways that people can access the ocean to learn about the ocean. So starting with snorkeling, free diving, scuba, all the way down to deepest submersibles. I was researching that book when I discovered the story of the whales, of the free diver with the whales. I read like an entire book about free diving, an adult nonfiction book about free diving, to write 2 pages in that book. And I listened I listened to a podcast where I heard someone tell the story. So the diver in my book is named Fred. It was Fred's friend who told the story. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I need to research that. I need to write about that. And the next day I went for a walk with my friend and I told her, she's like, you need to write a book about that. I'm like, I know, but I'm working on this other thing. And so I like put it aside because I was working on A Window into the Ocean Twilight Zone. Like I can't write that book right now. And then I was literally head down on a deadline because I'd sold that book on proposal. It's middle grade. And I woke up one Monday morning like, oh, I know how to write the book. I know what to do. So I didn't even get out of bed. I take my notebook from my bedside table and I wrote a whole draft out of my head based on the interview, secondhand storytelling. This is no way going to be a final draft. I haven't researched, but I'm it's the emotion. That's what I'm tapping into and the wonder. And I have an idea. So I write a draft and I'm like, okay, brain, great. Good, you're done now. Go work on that other book. You have a deadline. I woke up the very next morning, same thing. Wait, no, I have a better idea. Same thing, get the notebook, wrote an entirely new draft from start to finish.
Wow.
Within about a half an hour, just dump it. Okay, brain, good. Get back to work on that other one. Wednesday, same thing. But this time it was like, I know what to do. So I come to my computer, I type up draft 1, I type up draft 2, I make them a large font. I print them both out. And you all probably might know where I'm going with this. My magnetic poetry approach, I cut all these things apart and I put them on my kitchen counter and spread them around and I'm literally physically getting rid of the stuff that doesn't work and finding the heart of the story. And I had a great first draft at the end of that.
Wow.
But then I had to go do the actual research to verify all the things I had just written down.
Wow.
And the research was hard because I could find Fred Bui had posted photos on his website, but his narrative was very brief. And he's a Belgian man. He speaks English, but his caption was in English, but relatively short. And I heard on one of the things there was a video somewhere, but I couldn't find the video. And I had like a bajillion tabs open on my computer. And I finally one day I was like, I have got to tackle all these tabs. And I was like watching video after video, watching Fred free dive, watching how we dive, taking notes about getting really great words to describe his movements. But nothing still about this experience. And I literally had one tab left. It was two guys like us talking with headphones, and he was on Zoom, and I was just like, this isn't going to be it. And all right, fine, I'm going to listen. So I watched it, and I was literally almost going to click away, and then he told the story. Fred told the whole story, start to finish, all the details. I was like, oh!
Wow.
Writing everything down as fast as I could. And then I almost closed that interview because I got what I needed, but I was like, I'll just keep listening. And then almost at the end of the interview, they circled back to the story and he said the name of the person who was diving with him because he tells the story as if he was alone. I got the name Kurt Amsler. So now I go Google Kurt Amsler, blah, blah. He had a whole video of it online. I found the video. So now I've got Fred's firsthand account of it. And now I have the video, the actual video footage of it that I could check against my written manuscript to verify the accuracy.
Wow.
And I learned from that interview that one thing I didn't know, which was like Fred said, it was so overwhelming that they did not speak for the rest of the day. Like they rode home and they went back in silence on the boat. They did not speak. It was over. And each man, when you see them tell the story, it's like they were alone because you're underwater. You can't speak to each other. They each had a separate experience of that moment, which is why I chose to write it from just one person's perspective. And I initially learned of it from Fred's perspective, so I stuck with his perspective in the telling. And then ultimately I reached out to him. He read the text and he verified, yes, that's accurate. That's what happened. So I felt like, okay, this can go on submission now.
Wow. Did you send him a copy of the book?
Weirdly, he has not responded and I don't know how to get it to him.
Aww.
Fred, if you're listening,
I know.
email us at support@12by12.com so we can get you a copy of the book that's about you.
I know.
So
yeah.
I love myself a double gatefold.
I know.
And let me, you have
to back up.
You can see this, but hang on.
There you go.
There we go. It's so big it doesn't fit in the Zoom.
Yeah, your camera zooms in. That's the problem.
Yeah, but it's just absolutely stunning in every way, this book, really. I wonder if Jessica, did she go whale watching? Because one of the things that made me think of is a trip that I took with my kids to Alaska. We were cruising, in the Inside Passage. And when you see a whale, even just coming up to, or the tail, whatever it is even that much is a majestic experience. But
I don't know if she specifically went whale watching while making the book, but I do know that she has been fascinated with whales since she was young. She mentions that in the back matter. So I think it's, I think she was pretty excited to work on this book because she loves whales. She had a book that came out before that she illustrated, The Fisherman and the Whale, I think might be the title. It's a fictional story. And I believe it's a humpback in that story. But so it's something that she was very personally interested in already, it sounds like.
Yeah. So going back to 12 by 12 for a minute, First of all, that conversation about research was amazing. Thank you. And I do want to let our listeners know that 5-something-ish, maybe years ago, you and your editor at Charlesbridge, Karen Boss, gave a webinar on research for nonfiction. And so we will offer that to our listeners with a 25% discount. So if you go to 12by12challenge.com/Michelle, you'll be able...
2 L's.
With 2 L's. Thank you.
Right.
Very
Thank you,
important.
Kelly.
and we'll include that in the show notes. But even though I think that webinar was right when Flying Deep was coming out or had just been released, which is your first book, you were already working on the middle grade. Even though it's a few years old, there's so much information about doing great research. And Karen Boss is the boss. Right. She's the boss
100%.
of nonfiction and has been an editor at Charlesbridge forever. So you get that perspective, too. One of the things that you do in 12 by 12 is you run our book group.
I do.
And I know that you love that. So I wanted to give you a chance to say what that's all about and why it matters to you.
Yeah, so I've been a member of 12 by 12 since 2014. And whenever the book Big Magic came out, maybe that was 2018-ish, there was a lot of chatter in the forum and on the Facebook group about that book. And I remember I messaged you, Julie, like, hey, maybe let's do a book discussion about that book. Can we do that? And you were like, okay, yeah. And so we started, and then it was like such a hit that we just have kept doing it ever since. We, in fact, read Big Magic again, like 5 years later or whatever, because there's always new people coming and going. Right. And so we read it again. But what we do is we read craft books or books on creativity, the writing life. They're nonfiction, typically nonfiction books written for adults who are creators. And we discuss those in the forum. It's an asynchronous conversation. So what happens is I lay out a reading schedule at the beginning just to say, these are the pages we'll read each week. And then on Monday of each week, I open the discussion, and typically I'll write a few notes of things that I've noticed or things that are on my mind. I'll ask some questions, like get people to think about what's jumping out at them. And we have a discussion in the forum. So we do approximately 3 books a year. Depends. Sometimes, it varies. Sometimes if it's a really intense book, we might take a little gap. Like our first book this year is Suleika Jaoud's book. And that's a book where we're going to be like writing every single day in response to prompts. So I suspect there'll be a break after that one as we all go, okay, but we've read all sorts of books in there, and it's really fun. It builds it's a nice sense of community. It's a great way, I'm reading these kinds of books anyway, and I heard you on Kirsten W. Larson's interview that we did read her book as one of our books. I think you were right. I think it was 2 years ago. It was great. It was a really wonderful discussion.
Reimagining your nonfiction picture book.
That's right.
We'll have a link to it in the show notes.
I should say that out loud. Thank you, Kelly, for jumping in with that. It's a great place to meet other people and talk about writing. And, I feel like it's a way for me to give back. I'm a published author now. And so sometimes I might be a little bit giving something in the way of advice, as I comment on something, like, I think this is an important point. And most of the time my advice is really relating to trust yourself. This person wrote a craft book. If that resonates and whatever they're suggesting works for you, that's awesome. But this is not a rule that you have to do anything. There are no rules about how to be a writer. Anyone who tells you have to sit down and write 2,000 words a day or you're not a real writer, that's just not true. That's not real. It's real for that person.
Right.
So sometimes I'm saying things like that because I have experience with that myself, and I've learned things that work for me and don't work for me. And I teach in an MFA program at Simmons University, and that's a big part of what I'm telling students too. Like, I do not have the answer for how you should be a writer. You have the answer for how you should be a writer. The trick is to figure it out. So
yeah, I love that.
To honor it.
Right.
You know?
And you can get feedback and take that into your revision process if it resonates with you. But, you know, the only way you can learn how to write is by writing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm very collaborative. I have a critique group. I have a nonfiction group of people I call. I get lots of input on my work, but ultimately I'm holding up against, does it work for me? You know, like even in the grad class, I tell my students, my critique holds no more weight than anybody else's critique in this room. And certainly not more than your own understanding of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to say. So take it in. And if you say no, then that's great. No, you know?
Right. That's wonderful. All right. So now I'm going to ask you the question that I like to ask all of our guests.
Julie, I know we're running long, but there's a question that I'm dying to ask. And I have a feeling if anybody's followed Michelle on socials, they're going to ask too, is you've gone on actual expeditions with Woods Hole
Oceanographic
Institute. Okay. So you talked about researching at home, but you've actually gone out with these ships, with Alvin, with the ocean book that you did. That was a really long excursion. How did you get on those boats?
So first of all, I've been on one. So I have been inside of Alvin while it was in dry dock being worked on. I have not been on a dive with Alvin.
Okay.
It very much happened because as I mentioned, it's near to me. The Woods Hole Oceanographic is nearby. I had done tons of research. I had a solid draft. And then I said, I'm going to go down to Hui. That's how we call it locally, Hui. I'm going to go down. They have a science discovery center and they have an old Alvin sphere. You can sit in it and see what it feels like. I'm going to see what I can learn. I went down and there were tons of kids there that day. So I was waiting my turn because I'm not going to cut in front of the kids. And the docent, the volunteer who worked there was just chatting with me. And then he was like, you know a lot about Alvin. Like, are you a teacher? What is happening right now? And I was like, well, yes, I'm a teacher. But the reason I know a lot about Alvin is I'm writing a book. And he said, oh, you need to go talk to Joanne down at the communications office, the center down the road. And I'm like, okay, like just walking cold. He's like, yeah, yes, go right now. I'm like, all right. So I go down and talk to Joanne, like so-and-so sent me over here. And she's like, oh yeah, let me get you an interview. I can get you an interview with Bruce, the pilot and the manager of the Alvin group. They're at sea right now. This was in June. They're at sea right now, but they'll be back in August. So that's how it happened. I met with Bruce. I was prepared and ready, and we had a great conversation. He's like, you want to see Alvin? I'm like, yeah, I want to see Alvin. And then we're out there looking. He's like, you want to go in? And I'm like, oh my God, yes, I want to go in, Alvin. Like, I have a picture of me like, oh, God. You know? And so that developed a relationship with Bruce and with the communications office. And then when I was working on Diving Deep, that was really partially Bruce's idea. Like in our conversations, he was like, we need a book about other vehicles that go in deep in the ocean. And then when I started hearing about the research that was happening for the Ocean Twilight Zone project, I went back to Joanne and said, hi, Joanne, I'm hearing all this cool stuff about this project. Any chance you could connect me with that team? I'd love to write a book about that. And then I met that team. And then there were years of building trust with each other and getting to know each other. They were very keen to work with me, but getting on the ship was no small task. Like it was a big deal that I got onto that ship. There were canceled trips because of COVID, and then I have to get on the ship all over again because every time is new. So it was a process. You can't just go get on.
Yeah, you don't. It's not like a cruise where you get to just here.
Sign we talk about writing being a lonely, endeavor, but really, there are connections you need to make out in the world to do that job of writing. And I think what you're saying is really important is if you have things that you're really passionate about, connecting with those people, you just never know where that could lead. So
for sure. And genuine connections. Like I am like, I am just as excited to talk about Flying Deep now as I was when it came out in 2018. I'm still excited. I still get excited when I go visit Bruce. That's the pilot. Like I still go down and see him. Like, let's have coffee. Like, I love it. I love interacting with the scientists, the engineers, and hearing about what they're doing because I'm just genuinely curious about it, So.
Yeah. The
I love
curiosity.
that. Thank you for telling us.
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
awesome.
Julie.
It's a great story. No, don't apologize. Okay, here is the question that I like to ask all of our guests, which is to name a picture book that you wish you had written and say why.
So, if anyone who knows me knows that I really dislike favorites questions. What's your favorite? Because I have too many things that I love. But this question is different. And initially I was like, when you told me you were going to ask me, I was like, oh no, but actually that's not what you're asking me. You're asking me a book I wish I wrote. And I want to tell you, this is the book that I want to talk about is Giant Squid by Candy Fleming and Eric Roman. And the reason I'm saying this book is because this is the book that blew my mind when I was learning to write nonfiction picture books. So I had gone to a retreat for nonfiction writers in Georgia. Candy Fleming was one of the guests at that retreat. I was working on Flying Deep at that time. I had not yet gone to Hui and done all that stuff. I was really in the early stages. Oh no, I had gone down. I was waiting to meet with the pilot. It was in between. That's what it was. And because Candy's editor was there, they showed a PDF of the book. It wasn't out yet. And I was just like, what? Like, because this book captures, it's a book about giant squid, but scientists, there's a whole pile of stuff that scientists don't know about giant squid. And that becomes part of the narrative. So it captures wonder and curiosity and unknowns and what to do when we don't know the answer. How do we write about that thing in a book? And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like that. It's part of the narrative. They don't know the answer to these questions. Is part of the storytelling, which I just like. That is so great because that's something I want kids to know. Like science is changing, you know. I get super frustrated by adults who are like, scientists are always changing their minds. I'm like, no, they're not changing their minds. They're getting new data, new information that leads to new discoveries. And with new information, you follow new paths. And like, that's what science is about. It's discovery and finding out, you know? So that's why I picked that book.
Preach, Michelle.
Yes. And we are also huge fans of that book. It is... for all the reasons that you just said. So good choice. Good choice. All right. Thank you so much for being here today. It's such a pleasure, a joy to not only be able to chat with one of our great friends, but to celebrate your beautiful work, your contribution to children's literature. Your enthusiasm is contagious. And for anybody listening, if you like this episode, please like, follow, review, comment, subscribe, all the things that will help the podcast grow and reach new readers. And I think that's
Thank you both so much.
Kelly?
This was really fun.
If you're interested in learning more about research from Michelle and an editor's take on research, then of course you can pick up her podcast, like Julie said, not podcast, webinar for 25% off. And that's at 12by12challenge.com/Michelle. And it's 2 L's in Michelle. So that'll be, anyway, we'll have it linked in the show notes. Don't worry about that. Great. Just look at the show notes and click.
Yep.
Worth it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Do it together so never you fear. It's a handy little way to help you kick into gear. You're amazing, exciting. Look out, 'cause you're writing 12 by 12. 12 manuscripts. 12 by 12. 12 picture books. 12 by 12.